we're going to be going through today how we built this pit droid, sanding process, painting process, and also the chipping and the method that I used to do that, as well as a sneak peek at the electronics if the eyepiece stays on, and also how I made my own eyepiece. This is our little buddy here, sat on the table, and let's get into it.
Now, starting off with a dome, I printed this with a variable layer height and used the Archimedean chords top surface pattern, and that made this sanding a lot easier. So I've just used some wood filler on this and then just gone ahead and sanded it all down, and it actually came out really nice. Not perfect, but really nice. Now, I've already glued in a few of these bottom pieces, as you can see here from the instructions. So we've got the side bands on and also the greeblies in the center. The last thing I'm going to put on for this initial part is this bit which goes on the front, and it just needs some of these dowels to go into it. So we're going to grab those, glue them up, and then we're going to stick those in. And that will be the first part of the underside done. Here you can see me dry fitting one of these greebly parts because I wasn't entirely sure how this thing went together, so I had to follow the instructions carefully, make sure I got everything in the right order and in the right place. Once I was happy with how it all went together, simply take it back apart again and get ready for gluing. So glued it all in place using 2-part CA glue, being very careful to make sure I put it together in the right order because, to be fair, I do sometimes get things backwards. So everything went on pretty smoothly on this one, didn't have any issues. And then once it was all together, it's time to move on to the next part. This section did take a little bit of force to get into the kind of the recess and the holes. It probably would have been fine to resistance fit in place, but I know what my look is like, and because this is underneath, I decided that I'm going to glue this in. And this is the same for a lot of the parts. They do resistance fit and they do stay in place, but I decided to glue them anyway. Once this part was secure, putting in the struts which kind of support this was a lot easier. Let's just say that. So yeah, there was no more wobbling. So I just simply put those 2 parts in, as you can see here, put them over, and then glued those in place as well. The final piece for the head was the eyepiece, which we have here. Now it has 2 connectors on the back, and they just need to be glued into the recesses onto the frame right here and here. So dropping in some glue, and then we can just put that into place. This footage was captured on my mobile phone, so apologies if I keep going out of frame on these. It's actually quite difficult to film on that. I do have a camera now, so good news, I've upgraded. So future videos will hopefully be better in terms of me not randomly doing things out of frame. But I don't promise anything because it's still me. So do you remember I said a second ago that was the last piece to go on the bottom? I lied. There was more pieces to go on the bottom. But these pieces, for some reason, I didn't print them. I don't know why. So I had to go back, reprint them. So we're on a different day here, and we are putting the pieces onto the bottom. The part you can see at the bottom of the shot, that large kind of weird bowl shape, that's a stand for the head. I didn't need that, but I printed it anyway because it was one of the SCL files. Yeah, I'm an idiot. So I have this. I'm going to use it on a different project. I've reprinted another head, and we're going to be having a second video where I talk about a few other bits. But you can just sit and mock me for now, because that was probably about 12 to 15 hours worth of printing that I didn't need. There were a couple of clips under here to hold these extra pieces in place, and then finally it was just to put on these weird greebly things once I forgot which way around to actually put them on. Then once you have them in place, there are some clips which I used a pair of pliers just to nip them up and make sure that they stayed on. So no gluing at this point. These quite literally just resistance fit with these clips, so you don't even need to do any gluing. It's actually really well designed. I'm not going to lie, this is a very good build. And at this point we can say the head has been completed, and now we just need to move on to the body. Decided to start off with the legs because I knew that there was a chance that I would put these on backwards, and I wanted to kind of get it out of the way early. So grab the feet, the hips, the legs, and just started doing things wrong, to be fair. At this point we need to start adding the furniture screws. There is a list of what you need on the instruction document, and as you can see, as I'm putting them onto this knee joint here, there is a specific way around in which they go. One side has got some small dots on the recess, and that is where the male of the 2 bolts will go in, and then on the other side is where the female of the bolts go in. This becomes more important later in the build for me, but it is important to note at this point that that is how it's done, and I probably didn't read that in the instructions. So as you can see, as I'm working on putting the neck into the body there, those are the 4 dots that I was talking about. And as you can see, I am trying to screw this in the wrong way around. Next up, we just work through the hands, putting the fingers to either side of the main piece, and then just putting the screw straight through there. We then work on the arms, screwing in the elbow joints right here. Now, I didn't actually sand and prime the forearms. I don't know why. I think I just missed them. So next up, we're putting the arms onto the body. You do need to go inside the back of the droid in order to get these ones in place. And the final part of the upper body build is simply adding the head. Now I did mess up the screws a little bit on this one. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you sit and watch. But basically, so I was talking about earlier where they went in backwards. So there was a bit of a problem with resistance where the head just got floppy. So I had to fix that. So next off, we're going to the garage to do some sanding and then some painting. Now, in terms of sanding, we're going to be using 1000 grit sandpaper, and we're going to be wet sanding on top of this, partly because I've already done some of the sanding, but also because the layer lines were not too prominent on this dome, and also because I knew I was going to paint and weather this thing anyway. So I didn't need to go crazy trying to make this thing glossy smooth. It just had to not look 3D printed. At this point, I was using a wood file to really get into the chest piece where there were some pretty obvious layer lines I just didn't like. So this was just a case of basically just attacking this until they went away. Once the sanding was complete, I went over the entire model with some Rust-Oleum chrome spray, or silver spray would also work for this. This was going to be so that when I put the chipping medium on top, that there'll be something to come back to that actually looked like metal rather than going back to primer. There are several methods in order to achieve chipping, but I had 5 litres of liquid latex lying around from a previous project, so I went this way. And all I was simply going to be doing is painting this on to various points, trying to make it look rough by using some tape, to be honest. But that's just going to try and simulate scratches. And then once the paint is over the top of it, we can just simply come back and peel this all off. Once that liquid latex had had a chance to dry, which to be honest doesn't take too long, we can come back in and start adding the black paint. We then need to wait for this to dry so that we can come back and mask over the top of it in order to put on the green paint. Now, when you're doing this type of masking, it can be really easy to just think, you know what, I'll just do a little bit and not use too much tape or paper, and then I'll worry about it later. But the only issue with doing that is overspray. So if you're using a rattle can like I am, then you are very likely going to get overspray onto different parts of the model, which means you have to go crazy kind of with the tape and the paper and make sure that everything is covered except for the bits that you want to paint. Don't waste your time on this, because if you do, you're going to be spending more time fixing the problems that you've made at this step. So I saved you the pain of watching me pull off all of the liquid latex. That is not the most visually entertaining part of this video. We move straight on to using Dirty Down. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, Dirty Down is a really cool product, and I think it's used quite a lot in the film industry, just for making things look old, weathered, rusted, with a single water-based spray. So you can just kind of throw this thing on as much as you want. If you don't like it, get a damp cloth, kind of wipe it back off again. So I used a variety of colours for this one. We have a mild brown and more of a sandy brown, and also used a rust colour, tried to mix them up. I might have overdone it a little bit with this one, so I kind of went back after the video and did do a little bit more, a bit of water to kind of clean that up, but I like the way it came out. It is definitely a much more weathered droid than some people are building. This one's been through the ringer, let's just say that.
For the electronics on this one, it is really very simple and honestly is not a great setup. So I'm using a large battery pack in here, which is way too heavy for the size of the model. So I'm going to have to swap this out for something else. Just to prove you don't need anything complicated to make this work. So let's go through how I did. First off, we have the LED light on the front. Now that is one of the Maker World LEDs. So a friend of mine, so he sent it across to me and I hot glued it in place. Now I did have to Dremel out part of the inside. I have a spare. So this is what the inside looks like. And the LED did fit perfectly into this outer ring, but the wire would not go through this inner ring. So I had to use a Dremel, cut away a little bit of this plastic just to allow a channel for the wire to come from the LED and then go back into the head. And goes into this ridiculously heavy, too big for the job charger that I just had lying around. And as you can see, I have very carefully and expertly put all of the cable management in here to make sure that it looks professional and is up to standard. The bulb here is vacuum formed, and then we just got some chrome spray on the front and back. It did run a little bit. I don't know if this will work on here, but the paint did run, which means that when the light is on, and it doesn't really show up on camera, but there is a strange kind of eyeballing effect on here. But I decided to leave it. It can be part of the weathering, so I'm not changing it. It's fine. I will be releasing these vacuum form lenses onto my Etsy store very soon. These ones are 75mm, which means I need the spacer. I'm just making some larger ones so the spacer is not needed, and they'll go directly into the frame. There we go, and it's in place. So we still have the blue PLA, which is what I used for, well, most of the head. So as you can see underneath, that's still that weird blue which we've got on the outline here, but it looks fine. It's good. And ultimately that is the electronics. There is no complicated circuitry, there is no soldering, nothing. There was just a switch connected to an LED light and then connected to a battery pack. Remember, do not use one this big and this heavy. It's way too big and heavy. But if that's all you've got, then that's all you've got. All right, and that is how we put together our pit droid, who keeps trying to fall over. Come on, no, no. Yeah, have some spare Allen keys on hand, because with the battery up in the top here, this can get pretty top heavy. So you need to make sure the hips are tightened all the time. But anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe, comment, whatever feels good to you. And if you want to see more videos like this, well, I'm going to make some more. So good news. You can watch them when I make them. All right, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.